Most people only think about their medical bills after they've been involved in a semi-truck wreck. And I have seen so many people walk away from hundreds of thousands of dollars in damages that they are owed because they did not know they have many other items of damage they can claim after they've been involved in a semi-truck wreck, not just the obvious one being the medical bills. Hi, I'm Ted Spalding. I am a personal injury attorney here in Georgia, and in this video, I'm going to walk through every single item of damage you are legally allowed to claim after being involved in a semi-truck wreck. And the purpose is so that you can recover absolutely everything that you are owed damage-wise after one of these wrecks. You can stop being lowballed and stop leaving so much money on the table. A lot of people think after a semi-truck wreck that I just want to get my medical bills covered. But the problem is there's a lot of other damages in Georgia that you can pursue beyond medical bills. So let's talk about why that's the case. Medical bills are the obvious damage. You've got your ambulance charge, you've got your ER visit right after the wreck, and then you've got all the treatment that you're likely to have in one of these wrecks afterward, maybe 6 months, 3 years worth of treatment. You never know. That's obvious. You have a right to all of your medical costs, but that only scratches the surface oftentimes in a semi-truck wreck as to all the damages and losses, therefore, that you have. So imagine for a moment, you're on I-75, you're heading to work, and a semi-truck who's probably behind schedule isn't paying attention, driving too fast, and rear-ends you on I-75. You're lucky to be alive after a wreck like this. You're going to have mounting medical expenses. You're going to have issues with broken bones, concussions, all of these kinds of things. The financial hit can be huge. So the first thing that you need to remember is the Georgia law allows you to claim for much more than just your out-of-pocket medical bills. That's only the tip of the iceberg. And why? Because semi-truck wrecks are often very catastrophic. Unlike our pedestrian cars that I call it, the four-wheel vehicles that everybody drives around, semi-truck wrecks often are way more catastrophic. You've got heavy vehicles often packed with material inside the trailer. You're going to have extreme injuries in these cases, and those injuries affect all aspects of your life. And that's where all these other damages beyond medical bills come into play. So beyond medical bills, what else are we talking about here? We don't want you to leave money on the table by not knowing these things. So let's unpack all the different areas of damage that you can claim far beyond just your medical bills. After a semi-truck collision, it's almost a guarantee that you're going to miss work. Whether you're salaried, you're hourly, you're part-time, full-time, or you're self-employed, you run your own business. The good news is that Georgia law absolutely allows you to claim what's called lost wages. And what you got to remember is the lost wages are not just for the initial loss right after the collision, your hospital stay, for instance. That's easy. That's clear, right? You're in the hospital for 3 days. You miss 3 days of full work. Clearly, you have a right to that. But it goes beyond that because then you've got the time for going to the doctor after the ER visit. That could be weeks, months, years where you're missing 2 hours here, 4 hours here, maybe a full day every once in a while. All of these things add up as part of your lost wages. But it goes beyond even that, ladies and gentlemen, and you also have a right to future lost wages. So remember, it's not just past lost wages or present lost wages as well, meaning you're still having lost wages in the middle of your claim, but it's what future lost wages you may have as well. And that gets a little bit more complicated, but the good news is it's still what we call compensable. It's a claim that you have. So let me give you an example. I had a client, she was a nurse, hit in a semi-truck wreck. And what happened to her is she had back injuries. That kept her from being able to be on her feet, which obviously as a nurse, you're on your feet almost your entire shift. And we're talking shifts of 12 hours or more. So what happened to her is she had a chunk of time that she missed completely where she couldn't go back at all. Then once she was recovered, she wasn't fully recovered. She had permanent injuries. So going forward, she went from being able to do a full 12-hour shift to only being able to do 8-hour shifts. And that was going to be for the rest of her life per the doctors. It was not going to get any better. So what happens? She's got future lost wages of those 4 hours, or if it becomes even worse as she gets older and 8 turns into 6, she's going to have those future lost wages, and you can calculate those. And so what you do is you look at her work life and the hours she was going to miss on a weekly basis, at what rate, and then that gives you future damages. So for this client, she had past, present, and future lost wage damages that she could pursue. And something else to remember is don't worry about documentation. It is all able to be documented pretty easily. Number one, HR departments, they are a good source. We have forms that we can get to HR to have them certify what days you missed. You can get pay stubs. Tax returns are very, very important. And remember, in the state of Georgia, you cannot claim lost wages if you have not been filing taxes. So it's very, very important that you're filing taxes. If you're not, you are not going to be able to claim lost wages. So be very, very careful with that. But you have a right to all of this in addition to your medical costs in the form of lost wages. The next item of damage that may not be so obvious is in the category of pain and suffering. Now, pain and suffering is generally an obvious item of damage, but what I want to discuss is how it goes beyond just the physical pain and suffering. That's the obvious part, right? I'm sore, I'm not feeling good, I've got limitations physically for a certain period of time. Yes, that's all obviously compensable. One key, though, before we get into the emotional side of it, is don't forget, just like lost wages and medical costs, pain and suffering on the physical side is both past, present, and future. So if you're going to have physical pain and suffering for the rest of your life, for instance, you're going to have a very large future pain and suffering on the physical side claim. Now, let's talk about the less obvious one, which is the emotional side. And this is real important for me. Georgia law allows you to recover as part of the pain and suffering component, not just the physical, but any emotional pain and suffering that it causes. What are we talking about there? Well, some of the more obvious is the anxiety, the stress that is caused by your injuries, by being through a semi-truck wreck. Everybody knows, every juror understands that getting hit by such a massive vehicle is scary. And I have had big, huge bodybuilders that have PTSD after it. And you're going, oh, come on, man. Is it really that big of a deal? But no, they are legitimately frightened to get back on the road, especially on our major highways here in Georgia, 285, 75, 85, those kinds of things, because semi-trucks are everywhere. And it is a scary situation. So it's not just the physical, it's the emotional as well. And let's talk about how that plays out. So think of it this way. I've had clients that, used to like to hike, used to like to play golf, play sports with their kids, go on walks with their loved one every day, and they can't do that anymore. That obviously takes an emotional toll. So that's part of it. But then again, it goes beyond that, and you've got folks who are having night terrors, PTSD, from being in such a traumatic wreck. I had one client, for example, she was in I think it was a BMW that was an electric BMW. So the batteries were installed in the back of the vehicle. She gets rear-ended on 85 by a semi-truck, and the force of the impact exploded the batteries. So it caused a fire. She had to jump out of her vehicle while it was still moving so she didn't burn to death in the vehicle. Can you imagine the emotional pain and suffering that my client had after this? for the rest of her life because she almost burned to death. She suffered a little bit of burn injuries to her legs, but thank God her actions of jumping out saved her from further burn injuries. She had a bunch of other injuries, of course, naturally from the collision, but the fire itself. So there's a unique case where she's going to have PTSD for the rest of her life. She's going to have emotional trauma. She was losing sleep. These are all big components of pain and suffering. And again, remember, it's not just the prior pain and suffering, both physical and emotional. It's the ongoing, if it exists, into the future for the rest of your life, potentially. And how do you prove it? Well, there's multiple ways. You get doctors to talk about it, therapists are good sources, and probably the best are friends and family, what we call before and after witnesses that can talk about a spouse, that can talk about the night terrors. She wakes up in the middle of the night screaming. Never did that before the wreck. She's more depressed and anxious now, just in her daily life. Family can talk about that. Friends can talk about it. She's not as social anymore. All of these things are a massive component. And I like to say the largest part of any particular personal injury case, much less a semi-truck case, is going to be the pain and suffering part. This is the human element, the human damages that have a lot of value, again, especially in your tractor trailer or semi-truck wreck cases. Next, let's don't overlook the car itself. Oftentimes, when you're in a wreck with an 18-wheeler, your vehicle is going to be totaled. It's going to have massive damages. Georgia law allows either the actual fair market value of your vehicle if it's totaled, or to be compensated for the full repair costs using OEM parts, by the way, for that vehicle. And that's kind of somewhat obvious, right? People know this, but there's a couple of other things to be thinking about, the less obvious parts of what we call a property damage claim. Number one, remember in the state of Georgia specifically, you have a right to what's called diminished value if your car is repairable. So what that means is in the situation where car is repairable, you have two property damage claims. The full cost to repair the vehicle to bring it back to as close as the condition it was in before, and then diminished value. Diminished value is just what it says. It means now I've got a Carfax that is going to tell anyone I sell this vehicle to that it's been in a wreck, and they're going to find out it's been in a semi-truck wreck. You're going to lose a ton of value because you now have that accident when you go to sell your vehicle in the future. So big claim that a lot of people don't think about. They're just worried about getting their car back, being able to get back on the road. Do not forget you also have that diminished value claim. But there's an even less obvious property damage claim. What did you have in your vehicle that may have been damaged? This is a personal property damage claim. So let me give you an example. I had a gentleman who was actually coming back from golf course and a 18-wheeler T-boned his vehicle. Massive wreck. Car was totaled. He dealt with the lost value of the vehicle, which is the fair market value right before the wreck. But he was telling me, and he's like, Ted, it was a real bummer because I had my golf clubs. I think it was like $2,500 or $3,000 worth of golf clubs. And literally every single golf club was either physically snapped in half or were bent as part of this wreck. That's how big of a wreck it was. So he had a personal property damage claim. And I said, did you pursue that? And he goes, no, I didn't even know I could do that. I thought it was just a car. No, it is also any of your personal property. I've had laptops that are damaged in vehicles. I've had luggage that's damaged. People going to the airport getting hit on 285 or 85 by a semi. I've had phones damaged. You have a right to the replacement of those items. They're not going to be able to be fixed most of the time. Every once in a while, maybe an electronic device, but not certain devices, and certainly not golf clubs and things like that. So you have, in essence, like the car damage, what's the fair market value to that personal property? So don't forget those items of property damage that you have that are part of a claim in an 18-wheeler wreck. So after a semi-truck wreck, life at home can get really difficult. You may find yourself in a position where you're not able to work around the house. You can't cook anymore. Can't take care of the kids. Heck, you can't even take care of yourself. Can't do the yard work. This is what happens in these types of wrecks oftentimes. And it's again because of how catastrophic the wreck is in your injuries. Well, the good news is Georgia law allows you to recover if you are needing to hire someone to do any of these tasks that you used to do that you can't do now for either a period of time or forever because of your injuries. So let me give you a real life example. I had a client who had a severely fractured leg in a semi-truck wreck. And by the way, he lived on his own, so that made it even worse. He did not have family or friends there that could take care of him. So he was living on his own, couldn't even dress himself, much less cook for himself, clean the house, clean dishes, do yard work, all these things he was 100% doing on his own. So he had to hire someone to be there for him. And it was for several months as he's recovering, to almost like an in-home nurse, to be with him during the day, to go through these things, to cook for him, meal prep. Heck, he couldn't even go to the grocery store to get food items, that sort of thing. He had to hire a landscaper to do the yard to keep that up. We kept all the receipts and were able to present that claim as part of his damages. And guess what? The insurance company paid for all of it. And rightfully so. Georgia law allows it. He would not have had those expenses had it not been for this wreck, and that is not his fault. So he should not be out of pocket for that. So even if you do have family or friends that help you and you're not physically paying for it, you still have a right to the reasonable value of those services for those people having to step up and take time out of their day to help you. You just have to prove what that is. But it's absolutely compensable and something allowed by Georgia law. Remember, the law's on your side when it comes to these things. This is not an obvious claim. You've got to remember it in case you have these types of damages. Here in Georgia, there's another type of damage that you likely don't know you may have in your semi-truck wreck case, and that's called punitive damages. You don't have this in every case, and quite frankly, you don't have this in many cases, but you got to be aware of it because you don't know yours might be that rare case that has this damage. What is punitive damages? Punitive damages are not meant to compensate you for actual losses. It's punitive, also called exemplary damages. It's there to punish the defendant in a civil way. In criminal, you go to jail. In civil, it is a fine, in essence, paid to you as the plaintiff to punish the defendant for their extraordinarily horrible conduct that caused the wreck. So what are we talking about here? Let's give some examples. The easiest ones are DUI wrecks. So they violated a criminal statute. They were drunk or high at the time of the wreck. That caused the wreck. You would be able to pursue punitive damages, and rightfully so. It's a way to deter this type of conduct by giving you extra damage item in court paid to you to punish the defendant for driving while under the influence. Now, in trucking cases, there are sometimes some other ones. If they fell asleep at the wheel because they were violating federal law on how many hours they could drive, you might be able to pursue punitive damages. Now, punitive damages are not easy to pursue. So if you've got a semi-truck wreck and you think you might have a punitive damage claim, DUI or something else, you need to speak to an attorney because these damages can be massive. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars have been awarded by jurors for punitive damages alone in these types of cases. So reach out to an attorney to see if you have that potential in your case because you want to pursue it if you have it. It is a legal item of damage in a semi-truck wreck case sometimes. All right, the last not so obvious item of damage to think about is that these kinds of cases can have on your family. In Georgia, your spouse may have a right to what's called loss of consortium. And that's a tough topic. What is loss of consortium? Well, think of it this way. You're injured, you're not able to do things around the house. You're maybe suffering that emotional pain and suffering that we talked about. You're depressed, you're irritable, you're not as loving and fun and a companion as you once were. Your sex life may be off because of either physical or emotional. All of these things are part of what could be a loss of consortium claim by your spouse. It's in essence how your injuries are affecting your family, your spouse, your companion. Again, not able to contribute to the household, can't take care of the kids, aren't doing the yard work, can't help with cooking or the dishes or cleaning the house. You're not going on date nights anymore. You're not there for your spouse. All of those types of things can be part of loss of consortium. And again, these kinds of catastrophic wrecks can affect the entire family. It is a real item of damage. And thank God you've got that ability through your spouse to be compensated for this type of damage. The overall effect that this thing is having on your family, it can be devastating. And again, it can lead to a lot of your emotional pain and suffering as well. You know that what you're going through is affecting your entire family, but you've got the right to the claim through your spouse, and you don't want to forget potentially pursuing it. So let's recap. In the state of Georgia, after a semi-truck collision, you can claim so much more than just your medical expenses. You can claim lost wages, and that's past, present, and future. You can claim pain and suffering, past, present, future, including, most importantly, emotional pain and suffering. You have certain property damage claims for your car and personal property, and don't forget diminished value as part of that. You've also got things like the bad behavior of the truck, the punitive damages that we talked about, the help at home if you are needing to hire someone, that is compensable. And finally, we talked about the effect on your family, most importantly, your spouse. Each of these items of damage are real and can be very, very significant. And so you're entitled to so much more than just your medical bills. Now, don't let the insurance company rush you through a settlement early on in your semi-truck wreck case. Don't get lowballed. That's what this video here is trying to help you with, and we are here to help guide you through it if you need any help in your semi-truck wreck case. If you found this video helpful, don't miss our next video. Do this if the real at-fault party is trying to flip the blame to you. We'll walk you through exactly what steps to take if the other driver tries to flip the blame on you. It's a must-watch video to protect your rights and avoid a serious legal mistake that could cost you thousands of dollars.